Okay, so then we... All right. Purport. The transcendental person... Actually, somebody should read purport. Anybody wants to read the purport?
I will.
Please go ahead.
Mataji, go ahead.
You can also read. I'll follow.
The transcendental, sorry.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, sorry. Just scrolled a little bit more. The transcendental personal forms of the Lord are a mystery, and the symptoms of these forms, which are absolutely different from anything made of mundane elements, are also mysterious. The innumerable forms of the Lord, such as Shamasundara, Narayan, Rama, and Gaurasundara, the color of these forms, white, red, yellow, cloud-like Sham, and others. His qualities as the responsive personality of Godhead to pure devotees and as impersonal Brahman to dry speculators. His uncommon activities like lifting Govardhan Hill, marrying more than 16,000 queens at Dwarka, and entered the Rasa dance with damsels of Braj, expanding himself in as many forms as there were damsels in the dance. These and innumerable other uncommon acts and attributes are all mysterious. One aspect of which is presented in the scientific knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, which is read and adored all over the world by all classes of scholars, with as many interpretations as there are empiric philosophers. The truth of these mysteries was revealed to Brahma by a descending process without the help of the ascending one. His mercy descends to a devotee like Brahma, and through Brahma to Narad, from Narad to Vyasa, from Vyasadev to Sukadev, and so on in the bona fide chain of disciplic succession. We cannot discover the mysteries of the Lord by our mundane endeavors. They are only revealed by His grace to the proper devotees. These mysteries are gradually disclosed to the various grades of devotees in proportion to the gradual development of their service attitude. In other words, impersonalists who depend upon the strength of their poor fund of knowledge and morbid speculative habits, without submission and service in the forms of hearing, chanting, and others mentioned above, cannot penetrate to the mysterious region of transcendence, where the supreme truth is in transcendental person, free from all tinges of the material elements. Discovering the mystery of the Lord eliminates the impersonal feature realized by common spiritualists who are merely trying to enter the spiritual region from the mundane platform.
Right. Thank you so much. So, as you can see in the translation, the very first 4 words, by my causeless mercy. And so what happens by causeless mercy? You can learn the truth about my personality, manifestations, qualities, and pastimes. So what's happening here? The Lord is transcendental. Transcendental by definition means something that cannot be understood by mundane means, whether the mundane senses or mundane experiments or mundane knowledge or whatever. Anything mundane will not explain or help us understand anything that is transcendental. Think of them as 2 parallel lines that will never meet, and you cannot simply jump from mundane or material platform to transcendental platform on your own. You need mercy of either a pure devotee or the Lord. So here the Lord is talking about, it is my causeless mercy. Causeless because He's not obliged to give this mercy to anybody. He does it because, that's it, just because. That's what causeless means. It's not that somebody can demand it, not somebody suddenly becomes so deserving, no matter how much service they're doing, it has to be the Lord's mercy. Now, we can talk about Lord's mercy will come if somebody's sincere devotee, somebody's endeavoring very hard, somebody's associating with the devotees, chanting and reading books and staying in dham. All those things, they help. They make you eligible But in the final analysis, it's only that causeless mercy of the Lord that helps you understand these things. These things being Lord's personality, Lord's pastimes, Lord's appearances, qualities, form, etc., etc. And the Lord has innumerable forms, like literally millions and millions or billions of forms. We only know a few incarnations, but there's so many incarnations we don't even know about. And there's a verse in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, text 8, I think it's text 13, where Gargmuni is saying, Asan Varnatrayo hi asya grananti anuyugam tanu shuklo rakto pito tatha idanim krishnam gata. Saying that this person, pointing to Krishna, has appeared in every millennium. Sometimes it appears in a white color, sometimes in red color, sometimes in yellow color. This time it appeared in a dark blackish color. So the point being, Krishna keeps appearing, and each personality is being transcendental, therefore mysterious in the sense that we are mundane knowledge or mundane speculation, we simply cannot understand it. And that's why a lot of people start calling it mythology. How is it possible somebody can marry 60,000 wives? How is it possible that somebody can dance with 3 billion girls and have 1.5 billion forms right there? So everybody's thinking he's dancing only with him. How is it possible that 7-year-old boy can lift a Govardhan hill, a whole hill, which was a lot larger than it is today, on his left hand pinky finger for 7 days? People just don't believe it because it's mysterious. But it's mysterious because they're not qualified to understand this. It's like a practical example we can take, everyday example, is man lands on moon. For those of us who are not familiar or not knowledgeable on the science involved, themselves like stories, mystery, but it's not. Same way, transcendental things are not a mystery to that who's trying to understand this through the process of devotional service. And Krishna says that if you do devotional service, I'll give you my causeless mercy by which you'll be able to understand all these things. So that's the part in the first half of the purport. Second half talking about, because it is by my mercy, by definition, the parampara system, the disciplic succession, it starts from the top. It's a descending process. It cannot be an ascending process. In other words, on his own or her own, nobody can move up and try to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It has to come down from the Supreme Personality of Godhead for it to be perfect. And in our case, as being explained here, the Lord Krishna enlightens Lord Brahma to the process of playing his flute, the sound vibrations, entering Tene Brahmhridayadi Kavya, entering the heart of Lord Brahma. Those sound vibrations give him the knowledge he needs. That knowledge was given to his son Narad Muni, from him to his son Vyasdev, from Shukadev, Goswami, and on keeps on going. But the right process is that it must start with Krishna for it to be bona fide, and it must come down without any dilution or any kind of variation. And that's the proper disciplic succession. So once again, it's repeating here that we cannot discover the mysteries of the Lord by our mundane endeavors. It's only revealed by the grace, by the mercy of the Lord to the proper devotees who are qualified. So even though they're qualified, they still depend upon the mercy of the Lord. The famous story about Namoda Lila, where the rope was always 2 inches too short. 1 inch representing the endeavor of the devotee, but second inch representing the mercy. So they go together. On endeavor alone, even a pure devotee cannot get understand the Lord. It has to be by his causeless mercy. Yeah, that's what Lord Krishna is saying right here. Okay. Then is saying the Lord is transcendental and therefore is totally free from all tinges of material elements. And one who has discovered the mystery of the Lord's form completely discards the impersonal theories and impersonal understanding, which is very common in the world, because they now are able to see and realize the form, the transcendental form of the Lord, which is Satchidananda Vigraha. That's basically this purport. I'm going to stop and see if there are any questions or comments. No? Okay, so perfectly clear. I'll move on to the next one then. Okay, 153. Now, 153 through 154, 5, 6, 56 are actually literally just taken from Srimad Bhagavatam, they're known as Srimad Bhagavatam Chaturshloki. And this is the first one of those. Once again, Lord Vishnu is speaking to Brahma. And you may recall that when Brahma appeared, he opened his eyes and found in total darkness. He had no idea who he is, where he is, what he's doing here, what the purpose of him being there is, etc., etc. So he decided to explore. He went down the stem of the lotus flower that he was sitting on, which represents the 14 planetary systems. And he met the Lord, who received him, and he spoke the Chaturshloki. Aham evasam evagre nanyad yat sad asat param paschat aham yad etacha yo avshishet sosmi aham. Translation. Prior to the cosmic creation, only I exist and no phenomena exists, either gross, subtle, or primordial. After creation, only I exist in everything, and after annihilation, only I remain eternally. There's a long purport, so we won't bother reading it, but I'm going to explain the salient points of this purport. The very first thing he says, aham. That's how the verse starts. Aham, as you know, means I. And therefore, the speaker must be a person, because I means some kind of a personality. Personality means person, because only persons can have personality. A stone doesn't have a personality. A tree doesn't have a personality, so on and so forth. Anyway, so it's not referring to impersonal Brahman. It's referring to the person, Supreme Personality of Godhead. Impersonal Brahman is actually just a feature of absolute truth and represents the lowest understanding of the absolute truth. Okay. Then, in the second paragraph, the Lord is implying that there is another world other than the material world. It's called the spiritual world. And that spiritual world is never destroyed. Even when the mundane world is totally destroyed, totally annihilated, the apocalypse happens and it's all finished and merges in the Mahatattva, which disappears into Pradhan, all those kind of happen. There's no more material world. The spiritual world still exists. And as we know, the spiritual world consists of billions and trillions of Vaikuntha lokas, which all stay where the Lord, in one or the other form, like Lord Ram, Lord Nisikadev, Lord Narayan, Lord Vishnu, etc., exists there eternally with all his 6 opulences. What are the 6 opulences? Ashwarasya samagrasya, virya yashashira, jnana vairagyoschav, itan gunan, itan bhag, yanno bhag, itan gunan, which says that the 6 opulences of the Lord are his strength, his fame, his knowledge, his beauty, his wealth, thank you, and his renunciation. All those 6 opulences, he always has it, he never loses that. The second point that's being made here is that creation, when it talks about creation and dissolution, is clearly referring to the material world. The spiritual world is eternal, therefore there's no such thing as creation of it or dissolution of it. It's eternal, eternally existing, it will eternally exist. Now, another point being made is that everything is resting in Brahma Jyoti. What is Brahma Jyoti? Brahma Jyoti is the bodily effulgence of the Lord. And everything's resting in that, just like everything is resting in the sunshine, it's the sun rays. Everything, including the material world, is all resting on the rays of the body rays of the Lord, which is known as Brahma Jyoti or Brahman effulgence. The Mayavadis, who are only looking at the Brahman effulgence, they cannot see Lord Krishna, because they cannot go beyond the bodily effulgence of the Lord. So look at it this way. If we look at the sun, because of the brightness of the sun, we cannot see anything beyond that. We have a general idea of that there must be some kind of a globe there, but we can't really see the globe clearly because it's so bright. So similarly, Mayavadis who are looking at the Brahman effulgence, they're not able to penetrate anything beyond that. So they have no idea, no understanding of the form of the Lord. Because again, taking the example of the sun, you have to first travel through the rays of the sun to the sun globe, which is equated to a Paramatma feature. And then beyond that only you can see the sun god, which is equated to the form of the God, or personal form of the God. So the point is that one has to transcend the Brahman effulgence, which is the Brahman feature of the Absolute Truth, and the Paramatma feature of the Absolute Truth, in order to understand the person feature or the God feature of the Absolute Truth. Okay? But we should understand that it is Krishna, not anything material, not anything chemical, that is the cause for creation. And the first thing that gets created in the material world is Mahatattva, and then the whole thing happens in terms of most of material nature and time factor, and the Lord himself appearing, and then all the 7 layers of material elements coming on, like whole second canto on that. But my point is, it all starts with Krishna, and in the material world, it all starts with Mahatattva. Okay. Then, after a certain amount of time, which is 311 trillion 40 billion years, basically, there is dissolution of the material world. And at that time, everything gets absorbed. Sorry, I should say merged. It's merged in the womb of Lord Narayan or Lord Mahavishnu, whichever what you want to use. But when that happens, all the Vishnu forms of Krishna in spiritual world, including Golok Vrindavan, with Lord Krishna residing, they continue to exist, and there may not be any more material world, but the spiritual world and Krishna and all his incarnations, they still exist. And the other thing is that even though the Lord resides in Vaikuntha, but as Paramatma feature, he's all pervading. So you all know from Brahma Samhita, I think it's text 37. Let me see if I can remember it. Ananda Chinmaya Ras Pratibhavis Tabhi Tat Rup Kalabhi Nij Rup Kalabhi Golokya Vudeshwari Akhlaq Bhuto Govindam Adipurusham Tamamadam. So he's residing in the Vaikuntha Loka, but through his Paramatma feature and other expansions, he's pervading everything. Let's see if there's anything else. Yeah. Everything that exists is Krishna's energy. We are Krishna's energy, that is Shakti. The material world is a reflection of the external potency of the Lord. And anything and everything that happens in the spiritual world is a reflection of, or by, I should say, the internal potency of the Lord. Now, another point, last final point, is when the material world is dissolved, as I said, the spiritual world still exists, and it's not just the existence of the Lord and his associates, but all the activities, all the spiritual activities in Goloka and rest of the Vaikuntha planets, they continue. They don't stop. They're going on. They're known as Nitya Lila. Nitya means they never stop, eternal. So the material world appears and disappears. That keeps on going with every breath of Lord Mahavishnu. But the activities and the existence of the Lord and Lord's associates continues the spiritual world. And the purport ends with quoting from Bhagavad Gita 15:6. Yad Gatvana Nivatante Tadham Parmam. That's the spiritual world, the abode from which nobody comes back to the material world once reaching there. So, questions, comments, corrections? Okay, so I'm getting worried. Everybody awake?
Prabhuji, I have one question.
Good girl, go ahead.
Thank you. As we as we say, like Brahman effulgence is Krishna's, it's not none other than Krishna. Krishna ki hi effulgence. We understand that.
Hmm.
But now the question is, if it is not different from Krishna, why the people go there and they can come back from there, and the people who go to Krishna Loka, they never come back? Like they are, is that's a part of Krishna only. So why people go there and come back? Like,
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
right?
Yeah, I understand. So the famous Achinte Bheda Bhed philosophy, which means it's same yet simultaneously not the same. So it is Krishna's energy, and because energy cannot exist without the energetic, and the energetic has no meaning without the energy, they're same. But energy is not the same as the person. So it's a bhed and abhed both. So do you follow that much? It is simultaneously different and the same. Because one cannot exist without the other, they're same. But they are not the same because one is Shakti, one is Shaktiman. Energetic and energy. So they're not the same. So when somebody is entering the Brahman effulgence, they're not really entered the spiritual world yet. They're right there at the border, in the light. That's why it's called Siddhalok. So you go there, you sit there in the light for a long time, and you say, "This is boring." They come down. But once you get to the spiritual world, the only way you come back is you're sent by Krishna for a certain purpose. So like Srila Prabhupada, for example, other acharyas, Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, all these Goswamis, they were requested or instructed by the Lord to go for a specific purpose, and then they go back. That's why we celebrate the appearance and disappearance of the pure devotees, because we celebrate their appearance because they come here to deliver us. And we celebrate their disappearance because they've gone back home, back to Godhead, where they came from. Right? So somebody actually said that Srila Prabhupada, he left his body in Vrindavan. So he said that Srila Prabhupada left Vrindavan, Golok Vrindavan, to come to this Vrindavan. Then he left this Vrindavan to go back to Golok Vrindavan. Right? So that's what pure devotees are doing. And so that's different. But other than that, there's nobody forced to come back from the spiritual world. Okay. Did I answer your question or?
So light is not considered as a spiritual world, right?
No, it's not a spiritual world yet. It's not,
Okay.
That's where it's beginning. So beyond Brahma Jyoti is the spiritual is beginning.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Sure. Any other questions? Okay, let's continue. Let's go to.
Oh, I have a question. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask about, and I think it has been mentioned before, but I just can't remember the understanding behind it, like with Jai Vijay, because they had come from Vaikuntha, right? And
Correct.
they were cursed by the four Kumaras to come
Correct.
down.
Correct.
So, like, you can come down from Vaikuntha
Yeah,
planets.
but again, remember the whole story. Lord Narayan appeared, and Kumaras were embarrassed. They want to take the curse back. Lord said, no. He did it because I inspired you to do it. This is my plan.
Okay.
It's a story about how they had offended Mother Lakshmi, and they decided at that time that they'll go. It was instruction that sent them down. They were not forced to fall down. They didn't fall down. They were sent down. Okay.
Thank you, Ravi.
Sure. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Mohit.
So, Prabhuji, does Brahma Jyoti and Sadashiv Lok has the same setup, like in terms of does it have the same significance that no one returns, like they have this capability of returning back from that?
Yeah. So Sadashiv Lok is just above Brahma Jyoti, or Siddhalok, if you want to call it. And then above that is the beginning of the Paravyom, which is the spiritual world.
Yeah.
So yes, Sadashiv Lok also you can come down.
Okay.
But the spiritual world starts above that. So all the Vaikuntha Lokas, they start above that. It's called Paravyom in Sanskrit.
So that means above Sadashiv Lok.
Correct. Correct. So the hierarchy is material world, Vrija river, Brahmajyoti, Siddhalok, Sadashiv Lok, and then Paravyom, which is the Vaikuntha Lokas. And then above that is Golokunda.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Sure. Hare Krishna. Anybody else? Okay. Let's go to
Prabhuji,
Haji.
sorry to.
No,
Can
it's
you
okay.
repeat the hierarchy again one more time, please?
Sure. So it's the material world, the boundary of material world. Above that is the Virja river, also known as causal ocean. Above that is the Brahman effulgence, which is also known as Siddhalok, by the way. Above that is Sadashiv Lok. Above that is the beginning of spiritual world known as Paravyom, which is all the Vaikuntha Lokas. And above that is the Golok Vrindavana. Okay.
Prabhuji,
Haji.
Thank you.
Prabhuji, so Brahmajyoti is neither material world nor spiritual
Correct.
world, right?
Correct.
So is there any specific word for that?
Yeah, so Siddhaloka.
Sorry?
Siddhaloka.
Siddhaloka, okay.
Prabhuji,
Haji.
even from Brahma Jyoti, you're not forced to come. Like you're in a way because you cannot stay there for too long because there is no service there. It's just light. So there's nothing there, and that's why you if you're there, you want to come back because there is nothing to do. There's no service.
That is correct.
But otherwise, you're not forced to come back from
Correct.
there,
That is
even
correct.
though it's
Yeah.
it's not part of. You're saying it's not part of spiritual world.
Correct. So, but your statement, the second statement is also correct, that nobody is forcing you to come down. You come down on your own because, oh my God, I can't take this anymore.
Yeah, there's nothing to do there.
Correct.
Okay, so even though it's not fully a part of spiritual world, but you're still, if you want to stay there, you can stay there.
Correct.
Somebody can stay there.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Anybody else?
Prabhu, how can we stay there on our own will?
Why not? You staying
I
in your
don't
house?
know. Yeah, but it depends on our karmas, isn't it?
No. If you have any karmas left, you're not going to Brahman effulgence. There's no karma left. It's all done. You're pure. You're just not devotee. All the austerities they do to get rid of their karmas.
But ये नहीं कहते हैं कि जब कर्मास are finished, good karmas are finished, then you come down.
No, that's Devlok. That's heaven. We're not talking about heaven. We're talking about Brahmajyoti, Siddhalok. You're talking about heavenly kingdom, Swargalok.
वो नीचे है.
बहुत नीचे, वो तो मटेरियल वर्ल्ड में है ना. बहुत नीचे वो. तेतम भुक्त्वा संगलोकम विशालम क्षीणे पुण्य मतलोके विशति मतलोक.
तो वहां पहुंच के कर्म वो फिनिश हो जाते हैं तो नीचे भेज देते हैं.
हाँ, exactly. And there it's not a choice. You have to come down. तुम्हारा टाइम खत्म, भागो यहाँ से. Right?
Prabhuji, I was wondering that some people, the person who knows about Brahmajyoti definitely knows about spiritual world also.
Correct.
But then
To them,
I don't
that
know,
is
but
the spiritual world. To them, that is the spiritual world. That's it. There's nothing beyond that for them.
but so again, but the person who knows about Brahmajyoti, I'm sure that person knows about spiritual world also, Vaikuntha Lokas also, right?
No, if they knew that, they would want to go there. That's what I was saying. Can't see beyond that.
Okay, they can see beyond that.
That's correct.
Okay, fine, yeah,
Okay.
makes sense.
Prabhuji, you mentioned they're pure though. How can they be pure if their understanding is
They're pure because they have no karmas left. They have no sinful activities left. They're pure in that sense. They're
But
not pure
isn't it-
devotees. They're not devotees, period.
No, that's of course, but like how can They don't have any
How
karmas
does
left.
one go
but
to Siddhalok? You tell me, how does one go to Siddhalok?
you do a lot of meditation. That's how I
And then,
think of
no,
them.
but then what happens after meditation? What happens as a result of meditation?
There's that picture of the yogi whose Atma is like coming out of his head and he's going to Brahman effulgence.
Okay, but how does that happen? Like you and I cannot do that.
No,
So
I have no idea.
That's what I'm saying. So when you're able to, I mean, yesterday we were discussing in the Bhagavatam class with Kapil Dev was explaining that you have these 7 chakras in the body and you balance the vital air and you make the soul float. But when you're able to focus your mind, then your sinful activities go away. When you are able to control your consciousness, then your material attachments go away, and so on and so forth. The point is that process allows you to purify yourself of the karmas. It's not making you a devotee because you don't want to be a devotee. Devotee means service. They don't believe in the form. There's no service. They only try to seize their existence in the material world. That's all they're trying to do. Because they don't want material miseries. Okay? You're on mute.
Sorry about that, but
It's okay, no problem. No problem. Does that make sense?
yes. So their karmas they're pure in the sense that they have no karmas left.
Correct.
Okay.
But Prabhuji, there is a catch. In Kali Yuga, you cannot concentrate only. You cannot meditate. There is no point. Like that's why chanting is recommended for us, right?
Yeah, so that's a whole different discussion, right? That's why we don't bother doing all that. We chant.
So it means these people are not going to Brahmajyoti because they're not able to meditate.
Who? Which people?
All these people who are focusing on Brahman effulgence and they happen to reach to Siddhalokas.
Well, Krishna says it's very hard, very, very hard. Kleshas adhikarastayam. 12.5. Just read chapter 12, text 5. Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says it's very difficult. Very, very difficult. So it is, yeah.
Okay.
Prabhu, Preeti here. Hare Krishna. So today only I was seeing those yogis in India where they are meditating for years and years and years. So these would not go to this, like they don't reach to that level.
Which level?
I mean, from sorry, I can't say the term. The level you were just mentioning. So don't they reach to that level that Mataji was saying?
No, she was saying they reach the loka because they're not able to focus. Well, if they're not able to focus, they can't do it. It's not easy. Only if you succeed, only if you achieve perfection that you get there. No perfection, no getting there.
Yeah,
it's like we cannot go to Golok Vrindavan Dham without perfection of devotional service. Same thing. Destination is different, but perfection is still required.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu.
Sure. Okay. All right. Let's do 54. Rite artham yat pratiyet na pratiyet chatmani tad vidyat atmano mayam yatha bhaso yatha tamaha. Translation. What appears to be truth without me is certainly my illusory energy. For nothing can exist without me. It is like a reflection of a real light in the shadows. For in the light, there are neither shadows nor reflections. And a very powerful statement. In the previous verse, the absolute truth. Sorry, somebody wants to read that?
I would like to go.
Please go ahead.
In the previous verse, the absolute truth and its nature have been explained. One must also understand the relative truth to actually know the absolute. The relative truth, which is called Maya or material nature, is explained here. Maya has no independent existence. One who is less intelligent is captivated by the wonderful activities of Maya, but he does not understand that behind these activities is the direction of the Supreme Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita 9.10, it says, Maya dayakshena prakashita suyate chara charam. The material nature is working and producing moving and non-moving beings only by the only by the supervision of Krishna.
Right, thank you. So basically, in order to understand the spiritual world, the absolute truth, and the nature of the absolute truth, you must also understand the relative truth, which is Maya, which is the reflection of the real truth, which is Yoga Maya or Krishna. But we should understand that because Maya is an energy of Krishna, and as we were saying before, there's no such thing as existence of energy without the energetic. There's no existence of Maya without Krishna. So Maya cannot exist independent of Krishna. And, people can become captivated by the wonderful activities of Maya, by the allure, by the all the light, if you want to say I'm trying to look for the word, but I can't remember the word. Anyway, with all the astonishing things that we see in the material world, you can become activated by that. But we must understand that whatever Maya is able to do is doing it under the direction or supervision of Lord Krishna, as the quote is given here, Bhagavad Gita 9.10. Maya dakshari prakriti suyite sacharacharan hetunanan kaunte jagat bhari bharadante. So it's under the supervision of the Lord that whatever exists, moving, non-moving, whatever exists in the material world is happening under the supervision of the Lord and by the order, instructions of the Lord. Okay. Next paragraph, somebody wants to read it?
I can read, Prabhu.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, you go ahead, brother. Should I read, Prabhu?
Please go ahead, yeah.
The real nature of Maya, the illusory existence of the material manifestation, is clearly explained in Srimad Bhagavatam. The absolute truth is substance, and the relative truth depends upon the relationship with the absolute for its existence. Maya means energy. Therefore, the relative truth is explained to be the energy of the absolute truth. Since it is difficult to understand the distinction between the absolute and the relative truth, the analogy can be given for clarification. The absolute truth can be compared to the sun, which is appreciated in terms of two relative truth, reflection and darkness. Darkness is the absence of sunshine, and the reflection is a projection of sunlight into darkness. Neither one, the sunshine is blocked for, neither darkness nor reflection has an independent existence. Darkness comes when the sunshine is blocked. For example, if one stands facing the sun, his back will be in the darkness. Since darkness stands in the absence of the sun, it is therefore relative to the sun. The spiritual world is compared to the real sunshine, and the material world is compared to the dark region where the sun is not visible.
Thank you. So you've heard that material world is 1/4 and the spiritual world is 3/4, and which means that the spiritual world is 3 times the size of the material world. But how does anything become material world? So you heard the term Mahat Tattva, which acts like a cloud. So wherever that cloud is, underneath is the material world. The cloud is blocking the rays of the Brahman effulgence, and therefore the material world is called in darkness. In other words, when there's no sunshine, it's darkness. So absence of sunshine is darkness. And that's what I was talking about before. The sun must be appreciated in two relative truths. One is the darkness, the other is the reflection. So we understand the darkness part. Reflection we'll talk about in the next paragraph, what kind of reflection it is. But you can see the reflection of the sun in the water, and we'll talk about that as well. So anyway, the point is here that the spiritual world is compared to the real sunshine because there's nothing blocking the Brahman effulgence. And the material world is like a dark region because Mahat Tattva is blocking the Brahman effulgence. Therefore, we cannot see Krishna, we cannot see the sun, we cannot see the spiritual worlds because our view is blocked by the Mahat Tattva, which acts like a cloud. Is that clear? Okay, then read the next paragraph, please.
Okay. When the material manifestation appears very wonderful, this is due to the perverted reflection of the supreme sunshine. The absolute truth, as confirmed in the Vedanta Sutra, whatever one can see here has its substance in the absolute. As darkness is situated far away from the sun, so the material world is also far away from the spiritual world. The Vedic literature directs us not to be captivated by the dark region, Tama, but to try to reach the sunshine region of the absolute Yogi Dharma. Yogi
Right.
Dharma.
Thank you. Thank you, Prabhu. So this is the second part of the relative truth they're talking about, which is the reflection. But it's an interesting reflection. It says perverted reflection. Perverted reflection of the supreme sunshine. So example is given in chapter 15 of Bhagavad Gita. And if you look at the very first text of Bhagavad Gita, of chapter 15 of Bhagavad Gita, says, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Urdhmula Adhashakha Ashwatham Pahur Avyayam Chandansi Yasya Pranani Yastam Vedana Savedavit. It says that the material world is like the reflection in the water of a banyan tree. So now try to imagine the reflection of the tree in the water. It looks exactly the same. But the difference is when you see the fruits being reflected in the water, fruits of the tree, and you dive into the water, will you find anything? No, you won't. Will you taste anything? No, it won't. Or taste of the fruit, no, it won't. So it's reflection without the substance, without the essence, and without any, real pleasure. And that is why in the material world, everything being the perverted reflection of the spiritual world, the taste is not there, the enjoyment is not there, the reality is not there. What is higher in the spiritual world looks like lower in the material world. Again, think of the reflection. The highest point of the tree would look like the lowest point in the reflection, and so on and so forth. So everything is upside down. Everything is perverted reflection of this thing. And that's why the big difference between the spiritual world and material world is that in the spiritual world, everything is pure. And being a perverted reflection of pure, it becomes contaminated or impure when it is in the material world. So, for example, we can take some activities of Lord Krishna. Krishna has, Ras Lila with the gopis. It's pure. We do that, it's totally impure. Krishna steals butter. We steal something, it's totally impure. So take so many examples. What's pure there is impure here. Again, the reason being that in the material world, we're trying to do everything for our pleasure, our sense gratification. In the spiritual world, everything is for the sense gratification of the Lord. And that is why, without the blockage of the rays, everything is bright. In the spiritual world, everything is dark in the material world. And that's why the Vedic injunction is Tamso Ma Jyotirgamaya. Get out of the dark region and go where the light is, which is the spiritual world. And then it's described the spiritual world in the next paragraph. Somebody read the next paragraph, please.
I can read, Prabhuji.
Please go ahead.
The spiritual world is brilliantly illuminated, but the material world is wrapped in darkness. In the material world, sunshine, moonshine, or different kinds of artificial light are required to dispel darkness, especially at night. For by nature, the material world is dark. Therefore, the Supreme Lord has arranged for sunshine and moonshine. But in his abode, as described in Bhagavad Gita 15.6, there is no necessity for lighting by sunshine, moonshine, or electricity because everything is self-effulgent.
Right. So because the material world is dark, you need some artificial ways to get the light there. That's why you have the sunshine, which is, sun is basically a reflection of the Brahmajyoti, and moonshine is the reflection of the sunshine. And then we have all sorts of electrical gadgets for artificial light. We need all that to dispel the darkness because that's the nature of the material world. In the spiritual world, on the other hand, you don't need anything. 15.6 says, Natad bhasete suryo na shashanko na pavka. We don't need fire, we don't need sun, we don't need moon to light up the spiritual world because everything there is self-effulgent, getting the light from Brahmajyoti. Okay. Next paragraph.
Can I read, Prabhuji?
Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. That which is relative, temporary, and far away from the absolute truth is called Maya or ignorance. This illusion is exhibited in two ways, as explained in the Bhagavad Gita. The inferior illusion is inert matter, and the super illusion is the living entity. The living entities are called illusionary in this context only because they are implicated in the illusory structures and activities of the material world. Actually, the living entities are not illusory, for they are parts of the superior energy of the Supreme Lord and do not have to be covered by Maya if they do not want to be so. The actions of the living entities in the spiritual kingdom are not illusory. They are actual eternal activities of the liberated souls.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So, once again, it's saying the material world is very far from the spiritual world, and similarly, Maya or ignorance is very far from the absolute truth and has all the opposite characteristics. So, absolute truth is absolute, where the material world is everything is relative. Absolute truth is eternal or permanent. Everything in the material world is temporary. Everything in the spiritual world is close to Krishna, whereas everything in the material world is far away from Krishna. And that causes a lot of issues, including the illusion. And now it's referring to two verses from 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. One is 7.3, which is Bhumi Rapo Anula Vayu Panokam Kama Bhumi Rapo Anula Vayu Kamano Mano Buddhi Ahankarityam me Bhinna Prakriti Ashuddha. I screwed it up, but along those lines, which is all the 5 elements of material nature. They constitute the inferior energy, and the superior energy is the spirit soul, because it is spiritual in nature. It's not material in nature, but the spiritual entity being very tiny, very anu, the size of the 1/10,000th, the thickness of a hair, it becomes overwhelmed by the size of Maya and it allows itself to become under the influence and then becomes illusioned. Real nature is not to be illusioned, but it allows itself to be illusioned by being covered by Maya. And that's mainly because of the size difference. And but they have the choice. It is a choice that living entity makes, that I want to be covered by Maya, or no, I don't want to be covered by Maya. And that's the free will that we talk about. I want to serve Krishna. No, I don't want to serve Krishna. I want to serve Maya. So these are the living entities who have come to the material world. Those who are Nitya Siddhas or Nitya Siddha Parshadas, they are never in illusion, because all their activities are in the service and for the pleasure of the Lord. Any questions or comments on that? Okay, then let's move on to the next one then.
Prabhuji,
Haji.
sorry, just a quick question.
Ah.
So demigods are they Nitya Siddha? They're not, I mean, they're part of material world, but they're serving Krishna and helping him at times in his pastimes, Leelas. So are they Nitya Siddhas or?
Well, so what is the Nitya Siddha? Do the demigods die?
Yes, they.
So by
after.
definition, they cannot be Nitya Siddhas. Are they pure devotees?
Are they
Pure
maybe
devotees. Not saying devotees,
No,
pure devotees.
no.
Well, then they cannot be
No.
Nitya Siddhas, right? They also, who becomes demigod? You and I become demigod if we just keep doing pious activities.
Nitya Baddha.
Nitya Baddha, yeah. And that's why Mata is saying earlier that when they finish the results of their pious activities, they come down.
Right.
Forced to come down. It's not that they choose to come down.
They're
Nobody will
forced.
choose to come down from Heavenly Kingdom.
I know. Yes,
They're
you're
forced
right.
to.
Sorry for the very stupid question.
No, nothing stupid. Nothing stupid.
Thank you for clarifying.
Sure. Anybody else? Okay, let's move on to the next one. 55. Yatha mahanti bhutani bhutashchu va cheshva anu pravishtani apravishtani tatha teshu na teshu aham. Translation. As the material elements enter the bodies of all living beings, as the material elements enter the bodies of all living beings and yet remain outside them all, I exist within all material creations and yet I am not within them. It's just kind of reminding me of 9.4, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, who wants to read the purport?
I can, Prabhu.
Please go ahead.
The gross material elements, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, combined with the subtle material elements, mind, intelligence, and false ego, to construct the bodies of the material world, and yet they are beyond these bodies as well. Any material construction is nothing but an amalgamation or combination of material elements in the varied proportions. These elements exist both within and beyond the body. For example, although the sky exists in space, it also enters within the body. Similarly, the Supreme Lord, who is the cause of the material energy, lives within the material world as well as beyond it. Without his presence within the material world, the cosmic body could not develop. Just as without the presence of the spirit within the physical body, the body could not develop. The entire material manifestation develops and exists because the Supreme Personality of Godhead enters it as Paramatma, or the Supersoul. The personality of Godhead is in his all-pervading features of Paramatma enters every entity from the biggest to the most minute. His existence can be realized by one who has the single qualification of submissiveness and who thereby becomes a surrendered soul. The development of submissiveness is the cause of proportionate spiritual realization by which one can ultimately meet the Supreme Lord in person as a man meets another man face to face.
Right, thank you. Thank you. So, we know there are 5 gross material elements. What are they? Anybody?
Earth, water, fire, air, ether.
Okay, you just read it. Okay, and and there are 3 subtle material elements: mind, intelligence, false ego.
Yeah.
Those 8 combine to make the material world. There are 8 layers that basically surround the material world. Those same 8 elements are also in the body of any living entity, not just human beings, any living entity, right? Same 8 elements stay in the body. So the point being, those 8 elements are in the body as well as outside the body. Is that point clear?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, and the example can be taken that if you take a pot, air, sky is inside the pot and also outside the pot. So same idea. Okay, so, but all these 8 elements being material, they're dead. There's no consciousness. So on themselves, by themselves, they cannot do anything. So therefore, even though the elements exist, nothing happens until the Lord enters the cosmic manifestation in his Paramatma feature.
Yep.
And in Paramatma feature, he pervades every atom. So again, going back to Brahma Samhita 535, it says Andantarastha Paramanuchaya Antarastha. That as Paramatma feature, the Lord pervades every atom in the universe. And then things start to happen. Without that, the cosmic world cannot develop, just like without the existence of the soul, a body cannot develop. So therefore, the entire material manifestation exists and develops because of the existence of Paramatma, which the Lord enters as in the material world. Okay? And it doesn't matter who it is, the Paramatma which is all pervading. It could be a big elephant or hippopotamus or in the old days, T-Rex, dinosaurs, or a little small ant. Paramatma is everywhere. But one can realize the existence of Paramatma only through the process of submissiveness and surrendering oneself through the process of submissiveness to the Lord. And the more submissive, the more surrendered we are, the better our spiritual realization would be. Until we get to the point where we become qualified to see the Lord face to face. Okay? So here the importance of submissiveness and surrender is being explained as well. Okay, next paragraph.
I can read it, Prabhuji.
Please go ahead.
Because of his development of transcendental attachment for the Supreme Lord, a surrendered soul feels the presence of his beloved everywhere, and all his senses are engaged in the loving service of the Lord. His eyes are engaged in seeing the beautiful couple, Sri Radha and Krishna, sitting on a decorated throne beneath a desire tree in the transcendental land of Vrindavana. His nose is engaged in smelling the spiritual aroma of the lotus feet of the Lord. Similarly, his ears are engaged in hearing messages from Vaikuntha, and his hands embrace the lotus feet of the Lord and his associates. Thus, the Lord is manifested to a pure devotee from within and without. This is one of the mysteries of the devotional relationship, in which a devotee and the Lord are bound by a tie of spontaneous love. To achieve this love should be the goal of life for every living being.
Yeah, thank you. So, a surrendered soul develops attachment for the Lord. And this is not a material attachment, this is transcendental attachment, in that this attachment is there simply for the pleasure of the Lord, not for the pleasure of the devotee. So it is a concept of 2 types of enjoyment. One is called independent enjoyment, other is called dependent enjoyment. Independent enjoyment is that you are endeavoring to satisfy your own senses. Dependent enjoyment is you're endeavoring to satisfy the senses of Krishna, and by the enjoyment of Krishna's senses, you get enjoyment. Seeing Krishna enjoying his senses. That's the dependent enjoyment. Dependent enjoyment is the characteristic of a pure devotee. And a pure devotee becomes so attached that he automatically engages all his senses, all his 11 senses in the service of the Lord. And we have the famous story about King Ambarish, who engaged his eyes in seeing the beautiful form of the Lord, nose in smelling the tulsi leaves offered to the Lord's feet, and ears in hearing the Lord's katha, on and on and on. So that's the whole point, that a pure devotee engages all his 11 senses in the service of the Lord. And he gets pleasure from that. And as a result, the Lord manifests himself in the heart of the devotee and also outside. And because the relationship is transcendental, it becomes a mystery how both the devotee and the Lord are bound by the spontaneous love. And the story of Damodar Lila, Mother Yashoda being a pure devotee, binding the Lord with her love, and the Lord agreeing to be bound. I think we'll talk about this later on. There's a verse in the 9th canto where the Lord is saying, Sadhava Hridayam Aham, Sadhu Nam Hridayam Tu Aham. I am in the heart of my pure devotees, and they are in my heart. I can't live without them. They cannot live without me. I don't know anything outside of them, and they don't know anything outside of me. And that's the relationship that develops between the pure devotee and the Lord. And we'll talk about that particular verse a little bit later on. Any questions or comments?
Prabhuji, I just want to understand. I always fail to understand what is spontaneous love means.
Spontaneous love means that automatically it comes in your heart. You don't have to be told. You don't have to read about this. You don't have to be ordered. You're not doing it out of fear of something. It's there. Just spontaneously comes out without any external force. It's from inside. And it's automatic.
Automatic. Okay. Okay.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, I'll move on. So now we're on 56. The last of the Chaturshloki. Sorry?
Yeah.
Okay. Etavad eva jigyasam tattva jigyasunatmanaha anvaya vyatireka yat syat sarvatra sarvada. Translation. A person interested in transcendental knowledge must therefore always directly and indirectly inquire about it to know the all-pervading truth. Now comes the real key. Don't speculate. Don't try to get it on your own. Inquire. All our scriptures are based on inquiries. Bhagavad Gita, who's inquiring?
Arjun.
Arjun. Srimad Bhagavatam, who's inquiring? So many. Constantly starts with the 88,000 rishis, then goes Suta Goswami, and then Parikshit Maharaj, and then Vidut to Maitreya, Uddhava to Krishna. Everywhere, somebody's asking the question, somebody Yudhishthira to Narad Muni, somebody's asking the question, somebody's answering it. Our philosophy is all based on inquiries. But that is the only way, the best way to get the real knowledge. And obviously, the person inquiring from has to be an authentic bona fide source. In our case, it's the spiritual master, the bona fide spiritual master. Okay? Now, let's read the purport. Who wants to start the first paragraph?
May I, Prabhuji?
Please do.
Those who are serious about the knowledge of transcendental world, which is far beyond the material cosmic creation, must approach a bona fide spiritual master to learn the science both directly and indirectly. One must learn both the means to approach the desired destination and the hindrances to such progress. The spiritual master knows how to regulate the habits of a neophyte disciple, and therefore a serious student must learn the science in all its aspects from him.
Thank you. So what's the science? What is the science that's being referred to here? Anybody? The word science is being...
Self-realization.
Self-realization, I think.
The science of self-realization.
No, that's the name of the book.
God realization.
Well, I mean, they're all correct answers, but basically it's talking about devotional service. Devotional service is science. What is the definition of science?
It can be repeated if you follow the instructions.
Correct, exactly right. And this is another point to it. So that's absolutely correct answer. But there's one other point, which is no matter from which angle you come to it, you'll get the same conclusion. So it's a repeatable process, and doesn't matter how you approach it, you get to the same result. Okay, so devotional service like that. If you do this, you will get the love of God. Right? It doesn't matter whether you read Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam. If you do this, you will get it. So that's why it's science. It's not an art, as in like parenting, for example. Parenting is an art because the same parents can have two kids and they both turn out to be totally different. Same education, same environment, same food, same parents, same house, everything same. But two kids turn out to be totally different from each other. It's an art. The whole set of reasons for that. But my point is that one is science, one is art. Because one is repeatable, guaranteed results. We do the same thing. It's like you mix 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen. Under certain circumstances, you'll always get water. You cannot get alcohol. Okay? Same thing. You get the results are guaranteed if you follow the process. And you get the process from the bona fide spiritual master. Bona fide spiritual master is the one who comes from the disciplic succession, understands the tattva of Krishna, and is very, very familiar with the scriptures, can convince other people of the conclusions of the scriptures, and understands the conclusion of the scriptures himself very, very well. So we go to that spiritual master for our queries or inquiries, and we get the answers. The spiritual master not only tells us how to get to the love of Krishna, but also talks about the obstacles we're going to face and how to remove those obstacles. The spiritual master is also empowered by Lord Balaram through his spiritual strength to remove the obstacles from the path of the devotional service of his disciples. And therefore, a serious disciple must learn the science in all aspects from the spiritual master and don't go here and there. Last week we were talking about the need to not read other books. Stick with Srila Prabhupada. Don't get confused. Learn it first before you go anywhere else. Okay? Any questions or comments?
So Prabhuji, sorry, one question. So you
No,
said
sorry.
read books only from, well, that's the first thing. Obviously, there are so many of Srila Prabhupada books that we should read first. But any other sannyasi, if they have written any book, should we not read those?
You can. You can. If it's gone, you can, because then the support of whatever was written.
Okay.
But the point is, you don't even have time to read all the books by Prabhupada.
I know. Yeah.
Right?
True.
But however, the point is valid in that because ISKCON devotees would write things that are in support of what Prabhupada has said, it's okay.
Yeah.
So going to other sampradayas, it becomes a problem.
So non-ISKCON basically books, not go there. Okay. Thank you.
Ajit Krishna Prabhu, you're raising your hand. Ajit Krishna Prabhu, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, Prabhuji, thank you. So Prabhuji, so just a quick question.
Sorry, Prabhu, you're freezing. We can't hear you.
Sorry. Now can you hear me, Prabhu? Is that better?
Yes, that's better. Yes, thank you.
So I was just talking about the science part of it, Prabhuji. So one, of course, the process is repeatable. And then the other part, you said that regardless of which angle you come from it, you still get the same result. So in the context of devotional service, Prabhu, could you please elaborate a little bit more on this part? Meaning, even if you come at it from a different angle, we'll still come to the same result. What exactly would be involved in different?
Absolutely. So basically, let's go to Bhagavad Gita, for example. Arjuna wants to know about karma yoga, dhyana yoga, jnana yoga, all those kind of things. So saying, you can start there, no problem. But ultimately, you'll have to come to bhakti yoga. Or you can do bhakti yoga directly. But ultimately, you have to go. So whichever way you come from, ultimately you have to go to that point in order to get the love of Krishna. So nobody's saying, oh, just because you were a karma yogi, now you cannot go to bhakti yoga. Yes, you can. Just because you're jnani doesn't mean you can go. But you'll have to go there in order to get the love of Krishna. It doesn't matter where you're starting. Which angle you're coming from doesn't matter. That's one point. Second point is, you can ask from any perspective a question, but the answer will always get you to the same place. So, for example, you can talk about, like, for example, you just talk about different books. We talk about different processes. We can talk about Gyanis. We can talk about Mayavadis. We can talk about, Shunyavadis. All that. We can talk to anybody. But the point would be, ultimately, you have to get to the point where the purpose of your life is to get to the love of Krishna. So it doesn't matter how you're approaching. Ultimately, you have to get there. And that is bhakti. Okay, does that make sense? I think you're frozen again, Prabhu. You're also on mute. Prabhu, you're on mute.
Got that, Prabhuji. It was freezing up a little bit for me. Sorry, I think
okay. No problem.
I don't have a very good connection.
That's okay. Were you able to hear the answer? You're frozen again. And I'm on mute.
I heard most of it, Prabhuji. Wait, let me move my...
It's okay.
Now can you hear me, Prabhu?
I can hear very well.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, Prabhu. Yeah, I heard most of the answer. I think the last part, the second part, was a little unclear because it was breaking up for me here. Do you mind repeating that, Prabhuji? Sorry about that.
No, don't be sorry at all. That's fine. No, I was saying that it doesn't matter where you start from, which angle you come from. Ultimately, it all comes down to the ultimate goal of human life is achieving the love of Krishna. So whether you're starting as a karma yogi or pure karmi or sinner or jnana yogi or dhyana yogi, it doesn't matter. Wherever you're coming from, ultimately the goal is to get to the love of Krishna, and therefore you have to go to the point of bhakti, devotional service. Okay?
Got it, Prabhu.
Yeah.
Got it.
And also, as you can see, Arjun was asking from different angles, different questions, but the answer was always the same. Ultimately, you have to come to me. If we look at chapter 6, text 47, for example, after talking about all these different type of yogas, it's all fine. But ultimately, it's the devotional service, bhakti yoga, that's the highest. That's my opinion.
Right.
So that's my point. No matter where you're coming from, ultimately you have to get there.
Got it. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Sure, no problem. Gayatri?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Just in terms of like reading other scriptures, like what about, like I remember when we grew up in India, like they did Ramayana parts all the time. And I've heard somewhere, like it should only be like Valmiki Ramayana, it shouldn't be Tulsidas Ramayana. But I don't think there's like a Srila Prabhupada translation of Valmiki Ramayana. Like, are those kind of scriptures okay?
No, so Srila Prabhupada did not translate Valmiki Ramayana.
So can we read it? Like if it's not part of...
So here's the issue. First issue, as I said, finish reading everything that Prabhupada has given you before you run here and there. Now, you make a valid point that us Indians have Ramayana in our blood. So it's always very tempting to read. However, you should understand that there are portions in Ramcharitmanas, which is Tulsi Ramayana, that try to prove that the absolute truth is impersonal. So if you read that, you'll be confused. And that's the whole point, that we're trying to avoid getting confused. When our understanding is not so solid, we can be easily confused. So we read that the absolute truth is impersonal and takes a form to appear as Lord Ram, that's very confusing. Because we've been reading exactly the opposite. So if you don't have solid understanding, you'll get confused. So why bother?
Okay.
Okay, that's the reason. And Prabhupada said, everything you need to know are given in my books. Okay.
Okay. Vijay, I do have another question that's not related to what we're talking about, but it's more related to what we were talking about last class with the gurus.
Yeah.
And you know how you were supposed to take instructions from the guru and just like whatever our guru says, or you know, whoever we have accepted as gurus, shiksha or diksha, we're supposed to take instructions from them without any kind of doubt in our mind.
Yep.
But you know, like when we read the Gita, even at the end of the Gita, when Krishna finishes instructing Arjun, he tells him to like, okay, I've told you all this, now you still have to make a decision and like use your intelligence, like think about what all I've told you and then make a decision. But I feel like when we talk about our guru and the instructions we receive, we're not supposed to think, we're just supposed to execute.
Yeah, that's a very good question, actually. So Krishna is saying that I've given you everything you need to know. And he says, Vibrash etat asheshana yatechasi tathakuru. He says, analyze it. And then you decide what you want to do. So Arjun, you still have a choice. But Arjun has actually understood the instructions of the Lord by asking many questions, but not questioning them. Not once you will see Arjun challenging anything Krishna said. Arjun asked many questions, right? I think he speaks something like 80 verses in Bhagavad Gita. And but not once will you see him or hear him challenging Krishna. And that's what's being said. You don't challenge the Lord, the spiritual master, but you do ask questions. And then Krishna is saying, okay, if you understand it, now you have the choice of doing or not doing, right? Which means if you don't do what I've told you, you'd be wrong and you'd be a bad disciple. But Krishna said, I'm going to stop you from being a bad disciple. Well, that's your free will. But if you're a good disciple, you will do what I've told you to.
Okay.
And Arjun, being a good disciple, says, Nashto maha smriti labdha, tat prasadat maya achuta. Sthito asmikat sandeha karishye vachanam tava. Immediately says, I'll do whatever you ask me. I'll do whatever you told me. I'll do whatever you ask me. To the degree when Arjun, Krishna says to Arjun, shoot your arrows, and Bhishma Pitama who's dropped his arms already. He's not got no weapons. Shoot him. Arjun said, okay. But Krishna says, keep shooting. Arjun says, okay. That's the degree of surrender. So he's not questioning. He's not saying, Krishna, why should I do this? He's not even fighting me. He's my grandpa. I love him. He's not doing all that. His time to ask questions is over.
So we should be asking questions if we have anything our guru says that we have any doubts about.
Yes.
We should just ask questions about to clear those doubts.
For the purposes of clarification and better understanding, not challenge.
Yes. Yes.
Our whole philosophy is based on that. And that's why, for example, so many people ask questions in Srimad Bhagavatam. Arjun asked questions in Bhagavad Gita. Actually, there's one other person in Bhagavad Gita who asked questions. Nobody said that. I just thought of that. Who's the other? Yeah, that's right. That's how this starts. Right? He wants to know. Anyway, you get my point, right?
Yes. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Keshav Sevika?
Yes, Prabhuji, my question is on devotional service. As there are so many devotional service, like if someone is doing pujari service, another one is doing service in the kitchen, is there any service has more weightage than another? Or all are same? Doesn't matter what we are getting. It's
Remember, the higher, lower, better, worse is in relative terms that only exists in the material world. So when you're doing transcendental activities, which devotional service is, there's no hierarchy. If there's hierarchy, it's in the mood, devotion, and the love in your heart, the faith that Krishna is accepting my service. This distinction is in that, but nothing.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Sure.
Prabhuji, it's not a question, but I just want to understand if I got it right. The question Mataji was asking you about asking questions from your guru, right? So the gist of your answer was that we can inquire and ask questions, but the spirit should not be the challenging one, right? So we can submissively still ask. Okay.
Correct. So remember 434 Bhagavad Gita. Anybody
Tadvid
knows what?
Pranipradena.
Yes. So what is saying? Pariprashnena sevaya.
Sevaya.
So you ask questions, but in the mood of service, not in the mood of challenge. So asking questions is encouraged. That shows that you're trying to understand what's being told. Okay. Kisafika, did you have another question or you just forgot to lower your hand? Okay. All right. So it's 9:30. Let me see if there was, I think, one paragraph left in that verse. Yeah, okay. So let's quickly, there's lots. Okay, we'll come back next week. There's quite a bit. Okay, so we'll stop here. Are there any other questions or comments that
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna?
Prabhuji, but analytic questions always becomes challenging.
Say again?
Analytic questions always becomes challenging, Prabhu. Like if we really talk about, say for example, modes, types of modes, right? 3 types of modes. So Prabhu, like if we really understand like how we live in this world, we have all 3 modes. Have like in a 24 hours, we always go in all, we like jump from all 3 different modes, right? So if we ask this question, let's say to like any Maharaj or like any senior, so probably like it does becomes analytic over times and becomes challenging questions. Then how is it possible? So how we differentiate ki ye challenge nahi kiya gaya? Like if this is not a challenging mode question, but it's more about like trying to understand analytics behind it.
No, challenge is the mood, not the question or the type of question. It's the mood that you're asking. So you can ask about modes of material nature, you can ask about anything. But as long as it's clear that you're asking in a mood of submission and really trying to increase your knowledge and better understanding, I think any intelligent spiritual master would understand that. Unless I'm misunderstanding your question.
Because I know I did ask one of back in the days when I was not into this mode, but I was asking such questions. So I do believe that those senior devotees must have thought my questions are more into challenging mode, right? So what you're trying to say is any person whom the questions is been asked is the one who gonna say that gonna set the mood of the question, right?
Well, I mean, it's kind of hard to answer a question like that because so many different variables. But when you have a conversation with somebody, you know right away whether they're asking a question for the sake of asking, whether they're asking to test your knowledge, or whether they're simply going to argue because they want to argue. Right? And anything you say, they start challenging without trying to understand what you're saying. And you know right away. So I don't know what else I can say.
Because in a conversation, it's always 2 ways, right? Like, दूसरे वाले को क्या लग रहा है हमें नहीं पता. हम तो question पूछ रहे हैं, like he gonna take that in the other way around, and then it becomes बात की खाल निकालने वाली, right?
Well, Prabhu, like I say, I mean, I have answered questions of maybe from thousands of people and tens of thousands of questions. And I always know if a person is asking to test my knowledge, person is just asking because he wants to look good in front of other people, or just he likes to ask questions but is not interested in answers. I have a relative. They have a million questions every time I go to India. They ask me questions, but they don't pause to hear my answer. Before I say one word, they ask the next question. Before I say another word, they ask another question. So I know. So now just stay quiet. I just look at them. They keep asking the questions and they go away. So my point is, you will know, what's the mood behind the question and what's the mood that the person asking the question has in their heart when they ask it.
Yes, Prabhuji, understand. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, sorry. I hope I did answer your question. Not sure.
Yeah, I understand, Prabhuji, because I do hear, and then I also and sometimes hesitate in, what will the other person will think, like, I'm arguing or because I have many doubts when someone says something. I started thinking, and then I always have this thing in my mind. क्या उनको ऐसा लगेगा कि मैं क्वेश्चन पूछूंगा कि I'm
As
challenging?
long as the conversation is moving forward, you're okay. It's when the conversation gets stuck at one point, then you're not going anywhere. And now it's an argument for the sake of argument.
Understand.
There's some blockage in the height of somebody, the person asking the questions, or they're not interested. And that's that time you just stop. You say, okay, Prabhuji, I give up.
Understand, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Sure. Hare Krishna. Anybody else, anything?
Prabhuji, I want to say something.
Bolo.
Because we're talking about questions, so I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for always encouraging us to ask questions and always welcoming all sort of questions.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Haribol.
It's just that I'd like to make sure nobody's sleeping. Because remember, I have this qualification of being a doctor of insomnia. I start talking, people fall asleep. Anybody has difficulty sleeping, come to me. Guaranteed cure.
Prabhuji, that's even better. You don't let us sleep.
Okay, all right.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji.
Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo, Namo Namaha.
Jai Shri
Thank you,
Prabhupada.
Prabhuji. Jai Shri Krishna. Jai.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Prabhuji.
you.
Thank
Thank
you
you so much.
Thank you.
Happy Radha Ashtami to
Happy Radha
everyone.
Ashtami tomorrow.
Radha
Yes.
Ashtami.
Happy Radha Ashtami to everyone. Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Happy Radha Ashtami. Hare Krishna.
Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Take care.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you so much.
Sorry, I
Hare
couldn't.
Krishna.
Oh, Smita.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Thank you.
Hare
Krishna, Pitashri.
And Nandimukhi, how are you doing?
I'm good, Pitashri. Thank you so much for a very nice, wonderful class.
Oh, thank you. Do you have a minute? I'm going to call you, okay?
Sure, Pitashri. I'm available, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare Krishna.